Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm reviewing We Were Liars by Lockhart, and I unfortunately gave this book a 2 out of 5. My Booktuber shout today goes out to Steve Talks Books. I came across his channel through Chris Reviews and her recent kindness tag. I checked out his channel because she recommended that he is a very nice and very great booktuber, and when I checked out his channel, there is no doubt he has a great community if that's what you're interested in, where he has discussions and groups for not just books but also TV shows and movies. Unfortunately for me, I don't really have the time in my life to participate in booktube communities actively. I did join this Reading Life's Discord, but I'm barely in it. But if you're someone that's looking for a community, especially an online community in books, movies, TV shows, I highly recommend Steve Talks Books channel, and I'll link it down below for you. And as always, before I go into my full book review, I will always appreciate it if you like my content to hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have read this book, We Were Liars, or any of Lockhart's book, I would love to hear your opinion down below. This book was published back in 2014. It is young adult genre, and I would say specifically it's more of a romance, mystery, kind of young adults book. I do also want to say that since this book came out, that there has been a prequel that's been released called Family of Liars. So it's kind of cool how they both have the tie-ins of Family of Liars and then We Were Liars. About the author, Lockhart, which is actually a pen name that she uses. Her actual name is Emily Jenkins. She uses Lockhart because it is her maternal mother's maiden name. Or Emily has always wanted to be a writer. She knew as young as 8 years old, and at the age of grade 3 she had written 2 novels. Now she is an American author who lives in the US, and she writes a mix of children's picture books, young adult novels, and adult fiction. She knew she wanted to be a writer very early on. She did her bachelor's at Fisher College, and she studied illustrated books, and later on for her graduate studies she went to Columbia, where she got a doctorate in English literature. One thing that was really fun about learning about Lockhart and Emily Jenkins was that on her official website, she has a section where she has a bunch of fun facts about her, which I thought was really fun, because I find that a lot of authors that I have looked up for my booktube, their website usually is very professional and very formal, which there's nothing wrong with, but usually just shows their works and also their literary achievements and awards. But it's kind of fun to know a more personal side of each author, at least for me. So I really appreciate Emily having that little more get to know me section in her website. Overview of the story, and I'll also touch on the characters, but not too many because there is quite a bit of characters. So the protagonist is Cadence, and she's part of a big family in the sense that it's just her mom and her dad. Her parents are separated, however, but a big family in that every summer she goes to this island that her family has owned for generations, and her grandpa's kind of head of the island. And on this island, her 2 aunts also come with all her cousins. So I think on the island there's actually a family tree in the beginning of the book where it shows everyone that comes to visit, so you can see it's a pretty big family. And it's also cool because in the beginning of the book there's also a map of the island. So as you can see, there's like the grandpa who owns like the head house, and then each aunt owns like a mini mansion, and this is like a private island, so they're very rich. And the book kind of like talks about very blatantly that they're a very privileged family, and they grew up with a lot of privilege, and they're very wealthy and have no regard for like the common person. And it kind of alludes that like the grandpa is kind of like not only just a classist but also a racist. And also the aunt and her mom are very money driven, and even though they were set up for so much success by their grandparents' wealth, that all 3 women, the aunt and the mom, have kind of failed in life, either have been divorced or cheated on, and don't really have any successful business or ventures. So anyways, that's the premise of the whole family, I guess. So Cadence, she goes to this island at the age of 15. They go every summer for as long as she remembers, and there's lots of cousins, but there's 2 other cousins that she particularly is close with, Johnny and Mirren. And there's also this guy called Gat, who is one of her aunt's like new partner's nephew, so he's always on the island, but they mentioned that he's East Indian, which is important because I mentioned earlier the grandpa's kind of racist and classist. So basically Johnny, Mirren, who are Kate's cousin, and Gat become this foursome, and they call themselves bad liars or weird liars because when they were younger they were caught in a lie and a really bad covering up. So basically the story is about their coming of age and how every summer is so great, it's so endless, it's gonna feel like forever. But then one summer when she's 15, Cadence gets into a swimming accident and she suffers memory loss. And then the following summer, she isn't able to go back. Instead, her mom and then her dad, who have separated like years ago, want her to go to Europe with her dad, which is like really weird. And then we go to the 17th year or 17th summer where Cadence is back to the island, but everything isn't as it seems. People are acting strange. Her three best friends, Gat, Mirren, and Johnny, are acting weird. No one will really talk about the accident blatantly, and everyone's kind of like, oh, like, we're not supposed to tell you because you were injured, and you know the doctor said it's best if you kind of put together the pieces. And it's all just really shady, and like it's kind of like suspicious what's happening. So that's kind of the premise of the book. I'm just gonna stop there because I don't want to ruin anything, because I did give it a 2, but I think if you're going to read this book, it's definitely worth reading and it's not worth me spoiling. So that's about the gist of the book. Common themes I found for the book, which may be no shocker due to the premise I share, is that there's lots of, discussion about what it means to be privileged and what it means to live in the bubble, because Johnny, Mirren, and Cadence, who are the main characters, the cousins, they come from very wealthy background and wealthy upbringing, and Gat, who was like the nephew of the aunt, who kind of comes in, or like the nephew of the man who is dating the aunt, comes into the island. He comes from like just a regular class kind of person, so you can see kind of like the disparity between them, so that's super interesting. A other common theme in the book is the idea how money can tear a family apart. It is unfortunately a sad reality that I hope you never experience. We know when someone dies or when someone gets sick or gets elderly, and then younger people who are left start discussing what to do with the money, who's entitled to it, but like, yo, that person's still alive. It's kind of messed up. And the third thing that I really thought about that resonate with me was the idea of how young people, because all the protagonists are like 15, 16, 17, is they may be wrapped up in passion and gut feelings and just, you know, living for the moment and don't think about the consequences of their actions. So those were the 3 most common themes I found in this book. Now I'll share things I didn't like. I did give it a 2, so there are lots of things I didn't like. However, before I go into it, I do want to caveat that I am in my mid-30s, and I believe if I read this book in my late teens or early 20s, this book may have been a 4 or 5 for me. But I just think because now I'm just a bit older that I just am maybe not so much interested in these books or the characters and their internal dialogue, but I can recognize that if I was younger, it'd be more relatable. The first thing I didn't like, which is like a big red flag for me, was even though there was an ensemble of characters, like 10, 15 characters, there was not one redeemable, likable character for me. They were all awful, they were all spoiled. Even Gat, who was kind of like the everyday person, they all had woe is me attitude from all of them, and so for me it was just really hard to read the book. Other reason I didn't like the book is the writing style. I can see exactly what the author is trying to do, especially because it's told from Cadence's perspective, who is a teenager who is going through a traumatic like memory loss, PTSD experience, but the writing was very choppy, and to me it was trying so hard to be poetic, but it didn't seem authentic to the story or the character. So those were 2 big things that I didn't like about the book, which ultimately let me rate it a 2. Of course, with every book, even if it's not great, there are always things you can like about the book. So I will list 3 things I like about the book. The first one is unreliable narrator, which is my favorite type of writing style just because you can't trust what you're reading, and I think that's always really fun. The second thing is the reveal that happens. Again, I won't spoil it, but when it happens, I'm like, oh, that kind of salvage it from, I would probably have given this book a 1, but then it became a 2 because of the reveal. The last thing I like is that the main character, Cadence, goes through a lot of anxiety and panic, and it's really cool because the author personifies this. So for example, in the book, there is a moment where Cadence feels very overwhelmed that her dad is leaving her and her mom, and instead of saying that her heart was broken or she was extremely sad, she was saying that her dad faced her and shot her in the heart. And it's like, whoa, when you read it, it's like, wait, did that actually happen? but it didn't. It's just how she felt, and it personified that experience. So I thought that was really cool. The last thing I liked about the book is, if you got a more recent edition, is the author Emily Jenkins, or E. Lockhart. She actually has a bonus material between the characters, and she also has a note, and she also has even the original outline of the story. So I thought that was a really cool extra 20 or 30 pages, because I always like to learn about how an author came to write their book. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 3.73 out of 5. I believe it's very accurate, just because it's been out since 2014, 8 years, and it's young adult, and I feel like enough time has passed to give it a more fair rating. It is fun to look at the reviews though, because it seems that it's very like 5s or 1s. People either loved it or hate it, and it's kind of cool because in the acknowledgements, like the post-published one, the author acknowledges that people either loved it or hated this book. So I really appreciate that she is aware of that, and she's fine with it. So reasons why people don't like this book is they felt there was no plot, which I can't agree with. The writing was very choppy. They did not like the characters, and they felt like also, even though there was no plot, the dialogue between the characters didn't save the story. So these are all pretty damning reviews, but I would say I would have to agree with them, unfortunately. Reasons why people love this book, and you know, I think that if you're a young adult, and I read this when I was a lot younger, I would really enjoy this book. And the reasons why people enjoyed it was because it's a great coming of age story, which I think resonated with a lot of readers. I think that people really loved the emotion of the protagonist and how she's so poetic and the way she expressed herself, and people also loved the reveal that happens, and they thought it was hauntingly beautiful. So I think these are valid reasons why people like it, if you're that type of reader. But for me personally, I'm just not in the mood for that. Reasons why I think you should read this book. So I think you should read this book if you like a poetic mystery. I think you should read this book if you like CW TV shows, because I feel this book is kind of like a CW miniseries. Now share how this book made me feel, because as always, if you ask me a week, a year, 5 years from now, I'll probably won't remember what a book is about, but I'll always remember how a book made me feel. So this book, We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, it made me feel meh. I wouldn't recommend this book to someone unless I knew specifically that like this type of genre. It didn't make me feel great after about anything that happened to the characters, and you know, like I said, they weren't very great characters. So this book was a big meh for me, and I just want to say that it was originally a 1, but the reveal made it a even 2. Thank you for watching until the end of my review. If you watched till here, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, and also leave a comment down below if you've read this book. If you want to join me next time, I'm reading book number 2 of a trilogy. This one is called The Great Bear, and it's part of the Misewa Saga. And the first book was really good. It kind of reminds me of like an indigenous focus Narnia. So I highly recommend it if you're looking to be more inclusive and be more diverse in young adults reading. Again, thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!